All right, this form is for homes that have a homeowners association or an HOA. If the home is in an HOA, you got to disclose it because there's a lot of little rules and regulations that buyers have to know about. Even if you don't make a payment to the association, if there's still these rules, you got to disclose it. All right, so let's get into what we need to do here. And first, like always, I'll point out the wizard at the top of the page here. Should be green, which means it's turned on by default. So the wizard is what shows the explanation and walks you through the form, like so. You can turn it off, and you can still see some of the descriptions, and they aren't as pretty. And turned off, it won't walk you through the form. So whichever way you want to do it, it's up to you. Just be aware that that's what it does. And clicking on the X in the corner here of the box, that also turns off the wizard, which is kind of annoying. But just know that that's what's happening if you click the X. If you want to close this box, just click somewhere outside it to close it, and that'll do it. I guess I should note that this form will first be filled out by the seller. And for the video that I'm doing here, I have the form up with the blanks just for the seller. But if you're the buyer and you're watching this, I'll show you what to fill in too. I'm just doing it from the seller's perspective here. And I guess since this is for the seller, I'll note that you also need to provide something they call an HOA disclosure, which really is a bunch of documents that contain the rules of the association, like the amendments, financial documents. You probably received something like that when you moved in. So try to get all that stuff together now because you're going to have to give that to any buyers. Anyway, getting into it, first line you'll come to is the name. We're going to enter the seller name here and be sure to enter it the way it appears in the contract. That's very important. Jane. Remember, we're John and Jane Smithsonian, because John and Jane Smith was just too boring. And the property address. All right. And then the next field you'll come to is the space for the initials. And like I've mentioned in some of the other videos, because we're John and Jane Smith, they have the same initials. Both are JS. And just for demo purposes, it makes it easier to see when there's two different initials. So what we're going to do for John Smith, instead of JS, we'll just do JON and sign. And then if there's a second person, don't click the sign, because that'll automatically populate it with JON with the last initial that you did. So we're going to do a new, add new signature. And since we're not doing JS again, we'll do JAN, like Jane for Jane Smithsonian. And you can see this, the date stamp here. The reason we have these fields, they aren't centered on the line, is because this date stamp can cover it over. So just makes it easier for people to see that. So getting into the heart of the document, there's a lot of text here. Please be sure to read it. I'm not going to read through it all, so you can pause the video if you like, come back to it later. Just be sure you read it. All right, first field, enter the name of the community. We'll call it Shady Acres. Kind of sounds like a mobile home park, but we'll go with it. And again, read through these all. I'm not going to read through it. I'll just go through what the blanks are here. So the first blank here, we're going to enter the fee that you pay. That's the main fee you pay and how often you pay it. We'll just say it's $50. Click the next. $50 a, see, for example, month, quarter, year, $50 a month. And then the Next field you'll see is a fee for any special assessments. Like say they just made a new playground or repaved a road or something. You list that amount. We'll just say that's also, oops, $50 a month. And then the next field you come to is number 6 here. That is like a land use fee, some other fee that you got to pay, recreational fees, whatever. We'll just say that's $50 a month too. They're not all going to be the same. We're just doing that for illustrative purposes here. So if you're the buyer, there'll be a field here for you to sign and date. Like with the initials above, click new signature, because if you click sign, it's just going to enter the initials and then you're going to have to make another one there. All right, scroll into the next page. This is part B. This part isn't too common with houses. Maybe it's more common with condos, but it's about approving the buyer before they can move in. And it's saying in this section here, it's saying that the buyer must be approved at least 5 days before closing. And 5 is just the default that we filled in there. You can fill in whatever amount. It's important to note that some condo associations, you have an in-person meeting where they have to do that. If this date is not, of the date of your meeting is not within the period before closing, you got to make sure to get that time worked out. So sometimes it could be a little funky, but just be aware that that could be something that would hold up the closing. The next blank here is saying that the seller, you're going to start the approval process within 5 days of the contract being approved or the effective date. You can change that too. You can leave it blank. Default is 5. Not usually a big deal, so you can just leave that. Then in part 2 here, the seller has to disclose if there's any fees in becoming part of the association. Like maybe there's a $20 application fee to join the association. And I mean, that's possible. Everybody's looking for money these days. So in this section, you'll write $20 usually per instance, for an application to the community. And that just varies with whatever you're filling out. So that should do it for that. Part B here, that deals with the special assessments again. You'll check whether the buyer or seller is paying the special assessments. It's usually the buyer. We've got the buyer checked by default. But if it's the seller, you got to pay that full amount before closing. So just be aware that that's what that is. And lastly, there's a space for where the buyer should make the payments. So you're going to enter the association name, if there's a contact person, their phone and email. So we are Shady Acres, say Management Association. Just abbreviating that. And then you just put the person's name, phone, email. And if there's multiple places to send checks, you just fill that in here too. And then lastly, you can enter a website address for the HOA if there is one. That's about it. Hit the done button here. You want to submit it. Yes, it's good to go. And that should do it. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to us. Thanks a lot. Bye.